Hi, I'm Richard Danielpour. I'm ROCO's Season 19 Composer in Residence. In 2022, we started to hear about the rumblings that were going on in Iran with the peaceful demonstrations and revolts that were essentially spurred by the women of Iran who were protesting wearing the hijab, the burqa, the covering that in a way became a symbol for them of repression and oppression. In any case, when I started to see that young women, teenage girls, were being thrown in prison, in some cases tortured, in other cases murdered because of this, as a result of this revolt, I've always believed that there's a place where a political issue crosses over and becomes a humanitarian issue. That's where you'll find me always. It is a statement that I wanted to make both in tribute and support of the women of Iran, but also I wanted to write this piece as a way of speaking out against all repressive regimes. Well, first of all, Alicia is brilliant in the ideas that she's had. When we started talking about the idea for breaking the veil, it was her idea to have all of the women from the ROCO ensemble performing in this piece. And I loved it because this is a work that is written and has been written in honor of the women of Iran who have struggled valiantly against a repressive regime there. I went to the first rehearsal last night and I thought this was impressive to see. So the beginning of Breaking the Veil involves an ostinato rhythm which is in many ways akin to what you might hear in a funeral procession. And the rhythm is bum, 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 bum. And that ostinato really comprises the first part. It underlies the first part of the piece. It eventually evolves into a dance-like section, but that it's not a dance of joy, but rather a dance of protest. And also a dance that is in some ways an attempt to evoke the quest for freedom. And from that point, it goes into a quieter, more reflective movement in which each of the soloists have a chance to speak both together and individually in a way as to voice something more personal and something on a deeper level. I believe that instrumental music is very powerful because, as Felix Mendelssohn once said, music expresses that which is not too vague for words, but that which is too concise for words. This is, if I had to explain what some of these things were about, I'd probably write a vocal piece. But the little bit of mystery about what is being said needs essentially to be experienced rather than explained. I also watched as a child, I watched my mother, who is an accomplished sculptor and who has had an amazing run in her career. And she's 87 years old now, but I would watch her as a young man or as a teenager working in her studio. And she would talk about how the piece needed to show itself to her, needed to reveal itself to her, that it wasn't so much an act of will, but more an act of waiting. And I started thinking about music more in that way, as if I would wait for it. When they say, in baseball, let the ball come to you, it's the same thing. As I got older, I started letting the piece come to me without feeling like I had to lunge for it or reach for it. And that's very much the way I've worked in over the last, I'd say, 25 years. I was born in the United States, but my parents, my father and my mother, were both born in Iran. Each of them came to the US when they were fairly young. My father when he was 16 to go to college, and my mother when she was 7. It's interesting because my mother came with her family after having gotten a pass to board a US cargo ship in Bombay carrying wounded Marines. My grandfather had to cross the desert with his family from Tehran to Bombay, and they waited for weeks for a passage that would get them through Pacific waters at the height of the war in the Pacific. And they finally landed in San Pedro close to Christmas 1944. Interesting time. And then, of course, they settled in Long Island, in Great Neck. I've always believed that music can serve as a catalyst for healing. I don't believe that music does the healing. I think we heal ourselves. But sometimes music can be the gateway or the trigger, as it were, to open up the possibility for healing. I've seen this in concerts where people who might never feel a connection with one another somehow look at one another by the end of a concert with a sense of recognition that they too belong to the same human family.